Hello and welcome to another one of our videos in the Farm Transition Workbook video series. Today we're going to be talking about some material that you'll find in the Farm Transition Workbook Chapter 5, and that is Transition Contingency Plans. And you may be asking yourself, what's a transition contingency plan? Well, what we're talking about is the fact that you've worked hard up until this point developing a transition plan that anticipates a lot of the scenarios you kind of envision your farm or ranch going through in the next several years. But what happens if something happens much sooner than that, unexpectedly? Are the people that are involved with our farm operation going to be able to carry on with that farm operation if we were to suddenly lose a key player at a time well before we'd ever thought about? So what do we do in those circumstances? As much work as we've put into developing the farm transition plan, we also need to create what we would call a contingency plan. In other words, what happens when we have a sudden loss of human resources and we need to continue the farm operation without having someone who's been central to its operation? This isn't easy. One person made the analogy that this is a lot like trying to change tires on a car that's in motion. While you're simultaneously trying to keep a farm going on as a viable operation, you're also changing out major parts, and that's really difficult. So this isn't easy. And the way that we can survive this, though, is to make sure that the people that are coming after us have the experience and the expertise that they need. At the very first of this video series, we talked about the three primary reasons that farm transitions fail. And one of those reasons was that we had a failure to prepare that next generation for the roles they would be taking on. So one of the best ways we can prevent against the disruption of our family farm business is to make sure that everyone has a degree of cross-training and that we try to give them over time growth and management experience so that if we do suddenly lose someone that's important to the operation, other people are available and they have the skills that they need to jump right in there and take over if they need to on a moment's notice. In addition to having that human capital in place, another thing that we need to make sure is that they have access to the finances that they'll need, the equipment, and any other resources that they need. Now, with equipment, this may be as easy as making sure that we know where the keys are to the equipment, although sometimes on farms and ranches, that in and of itself isn't that easy. But having access to the funds might be a challenge. If we have bank checking accounts, for example, that someone would need to purchase inputs, do we have the tools in place so that someone can jump in there and get access to those funds when they need them without giving them access too early to that and causing some potential problems and people accessing funds before it's intended that they be allowed to do so? Last but certainly not least, we want to make sure that those folks that are going to be taking over the farm operation, perhaps unexpectedly, have access to the professional support that they need. Do they have a good working relationship with our accountant, with our attorney, with our lender, with our vendors? It's important to make sure that we have not only the human capital available if someone needs to step into the operation quickly, but make sure that they have the relationships that they would need to keep that business successful as well. Once we've considered all these issues, we literally need to sit down and create a plan for whoever would be coming after us in an unexpected event and spell out for them what they need to do to keep this farm operation going. We need to make sure that this is very clear and easy to understand and base it on the level of our successors' expertise and sophistication. And this needs to be an enterprise by enterprise, step by step plan. What do we need to do tomorrow? And I mean that quite literally. If we lose someone today, what do we need to do tomorrow with respect to the livestock operation? What do we need to do with respect to our grain crops, our forage crops? So on and so on and so on. Make it very clear what needs to happen, because we always assume that other people might be knowledgeable about our operation, but we may be taking some stuff for granted, especially if this person might be someone who's not on the farm on a daily basis. So be very clear, enterprise by enterprise, step by step, what needs to happen. Now, implicit in this is that this is going to take some time, and that's true. But you might also find that it has some side benefits in that it really makes you sit down and think through all of the resources that are necessary to run your farm operation. And that might have some benefits for the rest of your transition plan as well. Be sure that you include where to find those needed resources. Again, don't take anything for granted. Spell out specifically the location of physical resources. Spell out specifically who has access to financial resources, which banks they're kept with, which accounts those are, who are the signatories, who might need to be a signatory if they're not already. Be very clear. Also, Indicate who they can ask for help. If you need expertise with respect to this enterprise or this element of the farm operation, who is someone knowledgeable that you can go and ask? Who is a trusted advisor in this area? Also make a list of records that need to be kept. If we're doing this in the context of someone who's been lost due to death, we probably have a lot of records that we might need to keep for the sake of the probate proceedings or perhaps the administration of a trust. So be very careful about listing all of the records that the person who's operating the farm needs to keep so that those processes can go as smoothly as possible. Also, it may be important for us to specify what we can do in certain circumstances. For example, what activities can I undertake without really having to ask anyone for any sort of permission? Which sorts of decisions should I only make after I've consulted a professional? For example, our tax professional, our accountant, our attorney, our lender. And then which specific kinds of activities are going to require the approval of a trustee, of a court, or some other sort of order. All of these things are going to be very important to really lay out for the person that's going to be taking over so that they don't make any missteps. We've talked about the parts of creating a contingency plan, and this video has been fairly short, and we don't mean for that to belie the complexity involved in coming up with a contingency plan. These contingency plans are hugely important, and when done well, they can really take a lot of the pain and a lot of the stress out of the hands of your successor as they go about trying to keep the farm going when we've had a loss of someone very important to it. Spend some time with this as you've spent time with all of the transition plan elements that you've been working on to this point, and we think it'll really serve your farm well. If you'd like some more details about this topic or anything else that we've talked about in the Transition Workbook series, just go to our website. That's agecon.okState.edu/farm transitions. One more time, that's agecon.okState.edu/farm transitions. And thank you for watching.